Hello everyone, this is MC Deck Discussions and I'm OhBSmall, and today I'm here to discuss a leadership deck idea for Jessica Jones based on the FFG article that just came out recently. And I wanted to real quickly mention that I'm going to be trying to put out as many videos as I can from here until basically June 8th. I'm officially retired from teaching on June 4th, and then we begin our 3-week journey to Europe where we are moving on June 8th. And so I'll be out of commission for at least 3 weeks, and then we'll probably need some settle in time once we get there. So I don't know that I'll have a chance to produce any more videos during that time. So I want to get in as many as I can here. I might make that announcement at the beginning of each video here coming up. So I'll put timestamps as usual if you want to skip that, if you heard me say it on one video. Okay, so this particular idea, oh, by the way, I do recommend, I'm assuming that you've already heard from other content creators about the new cards in the article. So I recommend the two that I watched that talked about the article itself were from the Charred Gambit and from Get Up and Game. Great videos both, so you can watch one or both of those if you haven't seen one on the article yet. And then I also watched Villain Theory's deep dive, and one of the ideas that he discussed there I also was thinking about, and so I put together a deck that emphasized this particular card, Calling in Favors. And you'll see that, and I already had an idea with regard to what I wanted to do with Calling in Favors, and the fact that Jessica Jones will can flip to alter ego side basically freely each round, and I'll go over her cards again. So I wanted to take advantage of Suit Up, and then it was in watching Villain Theory's video that he mentioned Danger Room, and I had forgotten about that possibility, so I decided to go a particular direction because of him mentioning that in his. Basically he did a deep dive, one of his, but a nice kind of short deep dive, in case you wanted to watch his video too. Great video as usual, of course. All right, so let's get into, first I'm going to review the cards. If you feel like you've already memorized the cards, which I would tend to doubt by this time, but you could always skip ahead. But so I'm just going to review the cards so you can have them fresh in your head when I start going over the deck. Deck idea. So let's go ahead and look at those cards. Okay. All right. So first of all, there's Jessica Jones herself, right? So has 3 thwart, 2 attack, and 1 defense. And the defender trait, and she has this ability, gather evidence, response. After you use a basic power, place 1 evidence counter on alias investigations, and we'll see that card in a little bit. And then on her alter ego side, she has a 4 recovery. She has the civilian trait, and her ability here is incognito mode action. Change to hero form. You cannot change back to alter ego form this phase. So what that essentially means is that anytime you're in hero form, you can freely flip to alter ego form because you'll be able to come back to hero form. And you can't do the reverse if you start on Jessica Jones's side. On the civilian side, I should say. Her name's the same on both sides. If you start in her alter ego side, you can't flip back again. But that means you can freely flip down to alter ego side anytime you're on hero side, because you can come right back to the hero side again. Okay? And then her permanent card, Alias Investigations, is a location permanent, and it has this response: after a side scheme is defeated, exhaust this card, place 2 evidence counters here. Then you may remove evidence counters from here equal to the villain's remaining hit points to defeat the villain's current stage number. Now, in this particular build, I'm not really planning on taking advantage of that. I am planning on taking advantage of the actual counters that end up going on alias investigations instead. And we'll get a review of how those counters go on, as I go through these various cards. But we already saw one way those counters can go on here, right? She has this response: after you use a basic power, place 1 evidence counter on alias investigations. So there's one way, and then the other way is after a side scheme is defeated, right? Then you can exhaust this card and place 2 evidence counters here. So there's three possible counters that can go on this card to begin with. And notice she doesn't have to defeat it. This is going to be a solo-oriented deck. by the way. And so that does mean her allies could also be able to defeat side schemes, because it just has to be the side scheme is defeated. She doesn't have to do it herself. Okay. And then her Luke Cage is her ally, right? Has defender trait as well, toughness, 2 consequential damage on both the 2 thwart and 2 attack, and 3 health. And then this action, exhaust Luke Cage and deal 1 damage to him, give him a tough status card. And part of the idea in this deck is that you may or may not end up having him being an ally that stays in play the whole game. It's built to allow that to happen, but it may be that a person doesn't really decide to go that way. But this deck is built to allow that to happen, so he could defend for Jessica Jones permanently throughout the whole game. And be able to, here and there, do some extra thwarting and attacking as well. And then we have her own player side scheme. This scheme does not count against the player side scheme limit, so normally you can only have 1 side scheme in play. And so this would allow her to have this one in play and just kind of wait until you're ready to defeat it. It will have 6 threat on it, but when it's defeated, the defeating player draws 3 cards. And then she has 4 upgrades and a support. So the first upgrade, Circumstantial Evidence, is an item that has this response: after an enemy is defeated, exhaust circumstantial evidence, place 1 evidence counter on Alias Investigation. So once this card is in play, and it's relatively cheap card, then there's another ability to get evidence counters on Alias Investigations, so that we'll be able to use those counters. And you'll see why when we get to calling in favors. And then there's also Stakeout, a tactic upgrade, 0 cost action. If this card is in your play area, attach it to a non-permanent encounter side scheme. So it has to be an encounter side scheme. So note that it cannot be with a player side scheme. But if there is a non-permanent encounter side scheme in play, then you have this interrupt. When a character thwarts the attached scheme, that thwart removes 2 additional threat. If that thwart defeats the attached side scheme, place 2 evidence counters on Alias Investigations. So there's another opportunity to add some more counters to Alias Investigations as well. And then she has her leather jacket, and Jessica Jones gets +2 defense and has this response: after you defend, place 1 evidence counter on Alias Investigations. So there could be some motivation to use defense in this deck, though a lot of the times a person would normally want to use her thwarting ability for the most part, because we're going to be wanting her to be able to take care of the threat during the game for the most part, to allow the allies, because the allies should be coming into play pretty regularly, to allow them to do most of the attacking, but they'll be available to do the thwarting too. And so those are always, whatever it takes to win the game, of course, and keep things under control. And then she has this another upgrade, 4K digital camcorder, which is another item. And this has an alter ego action. Oh, by the way, notice up to this point, let's see, if we look at these other 3 that we have, those are all responses, right? That's a response. This is an interrupt. This is a response. They're not hero responses or interrupts, right? So it doesn't matter if you're on alter ego or hero side. This one, however, is specifically an alter ego action. But as we said before, based on her ability on alter ego, she can change to hero form whenever she goes to alter ego form, which means she can go to alter ego form freely. So she should be able to use this whenever it applies. Exhaust this card and choose a non-elite minion. Remove X evidence counters from Alias Investigations, where X is equal to 2 less than that minion's remaining hit points. Discard that minion. For the most part, once circumstantial evidence, is that the one? Yes. Once circumstantial evidence is in play, a lot of times probably won't want to use this card, because we're wanting to save the counters on Alias Investigations for calling in favors. And we'll see why in just a sec. But, you do what you have to do in the moment. And then for the support, calling in favors now. So this is a key card, though not the only card that's important in the deck from the leadership build will add also important cards that help with this, but this has an alter ego action as well. Remove 2 evidence counters from alias investigation. So it has to remove 2. That's why we care about trying to put counters on alias investigations all the time in this build. Though, like I said, in order to use them, instead of trying to use the support to defeat the villain. Of course, you might get to the point where you're getting closer to ending the game, and then you might want to choose to kind of switch strategies at that point. But for the most part, we're going to want to use this. So let's finish what this says. So remove 2 evidence counters from alias investigations and exhaust calling and favors. Search your deck for an ally and play it as if it were in your hand, reducing its resource cost by 2. So it's roughly equivalent to just adding it to your hand and paying for it, right? Although you can't add it to your hand because then it can be used as a resource. But it's roughly equivalent to that. So that means that, you just pay, you're just able to reduce the cost of it by 2 and be able to play that ally. So the plan is to be able to, once this card is in play, to be able to use it as regularly as possible. But the deck won't have to rely on that all the time either, right? Because that's a lot to ask, is for this to be out there all the time. And this is not a deck that's a card draw deck. I tend to favor those, but this isn't one of those decks. And then now we get to her 3 events that have been revealed so far, which, by the way, so far, if you're wondering how many cards have been, there are 16 cards in her kit altogether. If we don't count her permanent, then that should mean, the usual 15 cards. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are still 3 cards that haven't been revealed, but those I assume could only enhance things further. So here, big mistake, a 1-cost event has an attack, hero action, deal 3 damage to an enemy. You may remove 1 evidence counter from alias investigations to deal 2 additional damage, and for this attack to gain either overkill or piercing. So it gives her an ability. Of course, that's going to remove an evidence counter, which you're trying to avoid for the most part in this build. Or probably most any build, but it gives you a chance to do more damage, and it could be that you're needing to get rid of a minion, in which case you might get that counter back, the evidence counter back, because if you have circumstantial evidence in play, or it might be that you just need to do what you got to do to take control of the game, but it could also be you're making a push to defeat the villain. And then there's snooping around, 0-cost thwart. That's an alter ego action. Remove 4 threat from a scheme and place 2 evidence counters on alias investigation. So this gives us another chance to remove 2 counters. And again, it's not a big deal that it's an alter ego action because you can go to alter ego every single round. So let me finish reading it. Remove 4 threat from a scheme and place 2 evidence counters on alias investigations. Discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that card is a minion or side scheme, reveal it, which, a lot of times could be considered a bad thing, but because of her other cards, it actually could just present another opportunity to even place more counters on alias investigations. And then lastly, we have Breakthrough, a 0-cost event again. And it has a response after an evidence counter is placed on alias investigations, ready your identity. Shuffle this card into your deck. So that's really nice because if you ready your identity, not only do you get to do more, thwart, attack, or defend, but that also means that you're going to be able to put another alias investigation, what kind of counter? An evidence counter on alias investigations, because you'll be able to use a basic power. So that's another opportunity for that, or it could be an opportunity to go, when you go down to alter ego side, to heal up. Okay. All right. And then before I get to the deck, I do want to mention that I'm considering this card to be an option for the deck. That also comes in her pack as well. And it's the only one that I have in this particular build, this leadership build, that comes in her hero pack. And it's called Joys of Life. And it's a Alliance card, which won't matter for solo play, but it could matter if somebody tried this deck in multiplayer or adapted it for multiplayer. And has this action: exhaust a civilian alter ego, and note that she has a civilian alter ego herself. Ready a hero or ally. In this particular build, that would probably be the one that's used most often, though there certainly could be this other one as well: exhaust a hero or ally, ready a civilian alter ego. So I could see either one being used in this particular build, depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. But this is meant to be, it's not considered to be one that I strictly plan to include in the deck, but it's one I want to consider to be a possibility, if I were to start doing play testing. All right, now let's go ahead and look at the deck idea itself. All right, so I'm using Jessica Jones I'm using Black Widow as a proxy for this, since of course Jessica Jones isn't in Marvel CDB yet. So you want to ignore any of the cards that indicate they're her cards. So those have these little emblems here. So the ones you want to pay attention to then are the ones that have the leadership colors and the gray circles. That would be the basics. Okay. All right, and then you'll see that I have some optional options that, for optional ideas for this as well. It is a 43 card deck, so a fair number of cards in the deck, but that's okay. It's meant to have extra opportunities for allies to get into play, and we want to really end up focusing on Danger Room. So I'm actually going to start with the supports here first, and Danger Room. Okay, so if we look at Danger Room, it's a location in X-Men, and it has this alter ego response. After an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Danger Room. So this was the idea that when I was watching Villain Theory, that I was like, oh, this is a good idea. This will go perfectly with what I was thinking about building, and I'll just change my focus to X-Men, which would allow me not to, because there are times when I want to try to get away from using Nick Fury in my decks, and so I figured this was a good opportunity to do so, even though he could be just awesome for a leadership build as well. So I could definitely see myself choosing to do that at some point. But I wanted to go with something that would still be really strong without including Nick Fury. So let me keep going here, or I'll start over. After an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Danger Room. Search your deck and discard pile for a training upgrade and attach it to that ally. Any player whose alter ego has the mutant trait may trigger this ability, right? So what that means is we're going to want to have plenty of allies. So actually, I'm going to start with just Danger Room. Look at the allies and other ways we can get allies into play, and we already mentioned one of them, right? So her own deck has that ability when she's on her alter ego side, if she has that particular support in play. And let me go get a reminder of what that support is called. There it is, Calling in Favor. So she happens to have that in play, and she has at least 2 evidence counters on her deck. Then she'll be able to use Calling in Favors to get an ally that's in her deck. So that's important. It can't just be from anywhere. So get an ally that's in her deck, play it as if it were in her hand, reducing its resource cost by 2, right? So it reduces resource cost, but it does have to be in her deck. Otherwise we can't use it then either. However, when we do run out of allies in the deck, that does provide an opportunity to build up alias investigations more, to be able to easily use Calling in Favors whenever we want to in the future, but also be able to possibly build this up to have that way as an additional way to be able to defeat the villain. All right, let's go back to the deck itself again. All right, so you'll see that we have in here 7 allies, right? And then, so instead of Winter Soldier, of course, we would have her own signature ally. So there would be, 7 allies available, okay? And all of the allies that are added to the deck are X-Men allies, so that whenever we get one of these X-Men allies into play, we'll be able to trigger a Danger Room, okay, and be able to put a training upgrade on them. And I'll talk about the specific allies in a bit, but the training upgrade we have available, and all 3 copies that we can include, is Danger Room Training. So these attach to an X-Men ally, max 1 training upgrade per ally, and the attached ally gets +1 thwart, +1 ATK, and +1 hit point. Okay? So each of these allies then are nicely buffed up once this card is in play. Okay? Or I should say, whenever an ally comes into play. And the great thing about this particular build is that you can trigger this every time, because every single round, and when it's your turn, you can go to alter ego side. So you can just make sure that you always bring an ally into play when you're on alter ego side, or at least anytime you bring in an X-Men ally into play, when you're on alter ego side, you will always be able to attach danger room training to them. Okay? All right, so then let's go ahead and look at those specific allies now. So first of all, we have Beast, right? So 4-cost ally, and his ability, when Beast enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a resource card and add it to your hand. So the main purpose in having Beast in this deck would be when we're using that support card of Jessica Jones's. Then that way he costs 2 fewer, and then he can, he'll be buffed up, right? He'll have 3 attack and 3 thwart once he does come into play, because we'll be able to attach danger room training to him. And in addition to that, he'll be able to bring one of the double resources. So for the resources, that's all we have on here, the 3 doubles. So he'll be able to grab one of those double resources and be able to use that to play another card. So the goal of using him is to not only get a nice buffed up Beast in play, but also to be able to get a resource card right afterwards and continue to build out her own kit further. Or maybe even possibly get another ally into play too. So that's his purpose in being in here. And then we have Cyclops. Cyclops has the response after he enters play: choose an enemy until the end of the phase, increase the amount of damage that enemy takes from each attack by 1. So you're usually hoping to be able to push that onto the villain whenever Cyclops is coming in, when you're specifically targeting him. Okay? Now, for Cyclops, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the events here. Okay? Beast, really, you pretty much would only want to use Beast when you have the ability to cheapen him, right? So he only costs 2. Because for most of the game, you're only going to have 5 cards. Even though you go down to Alter Ego, you're not going to stay in Alter Ego side, so you're not going to get that benefit of having 6 cards in your hand, because she does have a hand size of 6 in her Alter Ego and a hand size of 5 in her hero side. So you're not going to get that benefit when you're in Alter Ego of having the extra card. So since you're going to be stuck with the 5 cards in your hand, that's why you want to kind of limit when you're going to grab Beast. But Cyclops is a 3-cost hero, so you're not going to have that same type of limit. And either he can come into the game naturally, or you have the ability to get him into the game using Suit Up, right? So if you have 5 cards in your hand and you have a 3-cost ally, actually, I was saying that in reverse. Let me back that up. If you play Suit Up, right? So Suit Up costs you 2 cards. But Suit Up is also a card in your hand. So if you start with 5 cards in your hand and you play Suit Up, that takes 3 cards to do that. Unless you happen to have a double resource, then it'll just take 2 cards, right? It'll take Suit Up plus the double. But otherwise, since the resources are relatively rare, there are only 3 of those resource cards, it's going to cost you 3 cards to play Suit Up. Okay? So that leaves 2 other cards in your hand. Okay? So when you grab a card like Cyclops that costs 3, right? So you would, let's say that Cyclops is an example, a 3-cost card. So 3-cost is fairly ideal in this situation. So you get Cyclops into your hand, and you're back up to, you were down to 2 cards, now you're back up to 3. But also Suit Up has you grab an upgrade that can be attached to that ally and add that to your hand. So you would grab Danger Room Training, okay, and be able to add that to your hand. So now that makes 4 cards in your hand, including Cyclops. And so you have just the right number of cards to be able to play Cyclops. And you might be thinking, oh, wait, but now you can't put Danger Room Training on Cyclops. But that's why we have, where is it? That's why we have Danger Room in here, right? So you can actually use that card, that upgrade, the Danger Room Training upgrade. You can use that to pay for putting Cyclops in there or any of these other 3-cost allies. And then afterwards, you'll be able to take one of those cards, take that card, perhaps that exact Danger Room Training card, and go ahead and attach it to Cyclops using Danger Room, at least once Danger Room is in play, of course. Okay. So then, so you have that opportunity to be able to get him into play and with that buff. If Danger Room isn't in play yet, then you'll still be able to get him into play. He just won't have the buff of having Danger Room Training on him, right? So no +1 thwart, +1 attack, or +1 hit point. Okay. All right, and then the same goes with these other ones. So you want to choose Cyclops when you're looking to deal that burst of damage onto enemies. You're looking for Gambit when you want a little bit of extra control, right? Because Gambit it has the response of look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck and tuck one under him so that only the boost field is visible. So in this particular case, you want to get extra control. Kid Omega, is only a 2-cost card, but you can essentially, it's like paying 3 for him if you want to have the extra ability of spending an energy resource to deal 1 damage to each enemy, or a mental resource to remove 1 threat from each scheme. And then we also have M. Now, M has an additional flexibility. So M is a 4-cost card, right? So M isn't a good choice for Suit Up unless you happen to have gotten one of the resources. Okay? But M has this great response, right? After M enters play, defeat a minion with fewer remaining hit points than M, and M has 4 hit points to begin with. Okay? And so M can be a great choice. Well, M can it possibly be an excellent choice, again, using that support card from Jessica Jones's kit. But also, that's why we have a couple of make the calls in here, is because make the call would cost 1 fewer to be able to get her ins, right? So if you have 5 cards in your hand, then you would be able to play make the call and then use 4 cards as resources to get M back into play, and then be able to use her response when that's what you need from her. Okay? Plus, note that she defeats a minion. So if you also happen to have that upgrade card that gives you an extra investigation counter, I think it was called, then you would be able to earn that counter because M would actually defeat that minion. Okay? And then Professor X, and the main idea with Professor X is just to make sure that you don't lose from it in advance. But Professor X has some flexibility too, though, because you're going to want to do some extra thwarting and attacking with these allies. And so let's say you brought Professor X in, and maybe you've already confused the villain, so the villain has a confusion on them, so you don't need that again. Okay? But you could choose to stun a minion, or you can ready another X-Men character. So Professor X could be a possible really good choice there. Okay? All right. So in any case, that means we've also covered the events, right? The make the calls and the suit ups. Of course, make the call could help bring other characters in as well. Oops, didn't mean to do that. All right, and then in addition, we have quite a few player side schemes in the deck so that we can continue to trigger her permanent cards condition that when you defeat a side scheme of any type, and even the player side schemes, then you'd be able to put 2 more of those investigation counters, or investigative, I can't remember what it's called now. So these would help with that. Plus, build support helps you to get one of these other cards in here. So might as well mention those supports now, right? We already mentioned Danger Room, but we also have Helicarrier, which is great because now if you get Helicarrier in play, then whenever you use Suit Up, you have more options of which ally you could choose. You could you could use M more often, but perhaps you'd be able to get, more options of being able to play more cards. Okay. And plus, Helicarrier has that nice advantage that you can use it in it's an action that reduces the resource cost of the next card you play. So you can use this in either the hero side or the alter ego side. And then we also have Team Training that can add 1 hit point to each ally. Note that Team Training is one of those cards that I would be considering to remove, right? So if I wanted to reduce the deck sum, I could remove. Team Training would be one of those under consideration. The nice thing about Team Training specifically is that it makes M a little bit more powerful. So M would have 5 health coming in. And if I remove Team Training, it would make it easier to get that Joys of Life event from Jessica Jones's hero pack into the deck too. Right, and then we have Call for Backup, just giving us another opportunity to get an ally into play. Specialized Training, so that we could get a little bit of card draw going on. So she could choose, and you could choose whatever specialized training makes sense at the time. If you're going to defend a lot, you could choose that one, or if you're going to use it to enhance your thwarting. But no matter what, you can get an extra card draw each time, or at least one time when when she uses one of her abilities, or whatever choice you happen to make from those specialized trainings. And superpower training, you saw that she had at least three or four upgrades that could all prove valuable, so it could get that into play. But all of them really just giving you also an excuse to get another player side scheme into the game as well. Okay. And then let's see. So I guess that means for the rest of the upgrades, we also have 2 copies of Ready to Rumble, because she can go back and forth. And I'd seen this idea from other people as well, because she goes back and forth really easily. So after she changes, it has the hero response after you change form, discard this card, ready your hero. So really natural to include. I only included 2, one to reduce the number of cards in the deck, but also one of the things I can't stand is getting too many of those in my hand, and making it so that maybe I didn't draw another card that was more important. And it also includes Sidekick. So I had mentioned before in that Luke Cage was a card that you may or may not want to focus on having in play. So because you are focused on these X-Men allies, but there are a lot of benefits to including him. And so you can give him +2 hit points with this, and then he's your sidekick. And then every time you go down to Alter Ego, you end up healing him back up, right? And he does have a pretty darn cool ability. So we'll go review that real quickly before finishing up. Right, so his ability, right, he has this toughness and he has this action, exhaust Luke Cage, and deal 1 damage to him. So that's the reason for getting that card in here. And it gives him a tough status card. So he could just forever protect Jessica Jones and allow her not to have to defend. Of course, we already saw that there may be reasons why she would want to defend. And if you do start defending with her, then, he could end up, you can use him a lot for attacking and thwarting, and heal him up pretty frequently too. So you got some different options with him if you want to include him in the deck as well. Okay, and then and I forgot. I think there was one other type of situation I was considering. Oh yes, I could see where, because of how well protected Jessica Jones might be, it could very well allow the allies to stay in play quite well. And so because of that, it might be that substituting Make the Call, getting the Triskelion out instead, and the Triskelion would allow you to increase your ally limit by 1. Okay? And if you did choose to, I don't think I mentioned these. So then, I did mention team training, but I don't remember mentioning Utopia. So the advantage of Utopia is if each of your allies has the X-Men trait, you increase your ally limit by 1. So that's a place where perhaps a person would decide they're not going to put Luke Cage into play. Okay, but the Triskelion would allow you to then also add to that. But the main thing about Utopia is I actually want the allies in this deck to be defeated relatively quickly, but not by using them to defend with. Okay? So instead, the idea would be that after an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Utopia and ready an X-Men character, the expectation would be that you'd be getting new ones in play a lot. So if you're able to have this response so that you can ready an X-Men character, they can be defeated from their costs of attacking or thwarting, their consequential cost. Right? And that's part of the reason why I might consider not including team training, because I don't necessarily want them to have the extra hit points. It could benefit M for sure, and any of these others as well, allow them to stay out longer, but I don't necessarily want them to stay out longer either. I want them to be used up, and Utopia allows them to get used up and allows them to get replaced by other X-Men allies to continue to add to the thwarting and attacking and keep the villain on the defensive. Okay, all right, so that's it then for the deck idea. Hope you enjoyed this take, and hopefully it spurred on some of your own ideas as well. Have a good one, everybody.